Test 1, 2. This is a test. Check 1, 2. 1, 2, check.
You just waiting for a quorum at this point? Shit. Are you going to give us an opening statement, Michaela? Anybody actually hear me?
Sorry, I was getting noodles and then my phone wasn't recognizing my fingerprint to unlock it.
Yeah, I didn't know. On my computer, I'm like, it's like, is something weird going on?
Dude, you are cutting in and out though. I heard you like mid sentence and then I was like, nobody said anything. So I was like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I've been having. That's probably coming in better now, right?
Yeah, but I don't know what you've been having because it cut you off.
Yeah, I've been trying to mess with the sensitivity on my microphone because sometimes I'm too low, sometimes I'm cutting in and out, sometimes people hear everything that's going on. I don't know. Discord's
Well,
not my friend lately.
it's, it's fine now. So, okay. I wanted to talk about transgenderism because in the past, I've had some slightly bigoted views about the topic and the issue, and it's been on my mind a lot. I've been watching that TLC show, I Am Jazz, and I'm like, oh, I'm learning a lot. I was such an asshole to like trans people in my life in the past. And this one particular person, I was at residential mental health treatment, and there was a male to female transgender individual, and I called her he a lot when she wasn't around, and like I think once to her face, and like I feel bad about it. And I tried to find her on Facebook to like apologize, but she unfriended me like probably a while ago.
Damn, yeah.
Uh, so I just kind of wanted to talk about it a little bit, and yeah, I guess sort of symbolically ease my conscience about how much of an
Yeah.
asshole I've been in the past.
Yep. So what is I Am Jazz?
So Jazz is a girl. She's a male to female transgender girl. She was one of the first people who started hormone blockers at a young age to prevent uh, going through male puberty. And the girls would watch that show. Sorry, that's my dog in the background, squeaking her Mr. Chili toy. We throw it in the other room. Uh, they would watch that show when I was at treatment, and I was like, "What is this? Like, this is child abuse." And I was wrong about all of the things, and I think that we should talk about it.
Yeah.
So my main thing is like I'm learning that they like I used to think in the past like, oh, they're just not accepting that it's body dysmorphia and that it's an illness. But like, no, they actually are. It's like that's like the first thing they would say is, yeah, I have body dysmorphia. My insides don't match my outsides. Sadie, that's getting really fucking annoying. And they're basically just trying to like keep these kids alive, from what I can ascertain. It's like when I look at myself, I experience myself as a woman, and I guess it would be really jarring if when I thought about myself, I felt like a man, but then I like looked at myself and I saw girl parts. Like I can see why that's extremely distressing for trans folks now, and that's not something I'd considered in the past.
That's interesting. I've never, I don't know, like to me, my stance has always been like, I don't know, if somebody tells me this is how they feel, who am I to be like, no, you're wrong? Like, no, it's like this person just telling me how they feel, right?
Yeah, and it's like, but I used to not think that. I used to like think the opposite, where it was like, no, you're fucked up. But maybe it's like I don't know. I would just wondered what everybody thinks, and I thought it would be a good good thing to talk about. Sadie, I swear I'm gonna take that toy away from you if you keep squeaking it.
Yeah, I think this will be a good convo. Ghost, what's your take?
Oh,
Are you there, Ghost?
I'm gonna mute because Sadie's being super annoying, and I imagine it's annoying for everybody else.
I'm sorry.
I can't even
Yeah, we
hear.
can't even hear it. It's not
Yeah.
even activating your mic yet.
I kind of just came in to listen, to be honest.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
Milos, Sad Lizard, TL, Doctor. What you guys got?
Is someone's name just Doctor? Oh, it's Doolittle. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Doctor. I always call him Doctor.
Well, because one of my friends is a doctor, and I'm like, oh, maybe they know each other. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor in real life. I just I play one on a video game.
That's fun.
I kind of missed the lead up. Like, what's the question about it?
Well, we're just kind of talking about our perspective on things and maybe how that perspective has changed over time and with new information and things like that. I explained how me personally, I've sort of had my mind about it being changed a lot over the last few weeks, and I sort of just feel guilty about the way that I spoke about it in the past. And
Did you say why you changed your mind?
Because I've been watching this show on TLC called I Am Jazz, which follows the story of a male to female transgender girl named Jazz. And the way they explain stuff on there, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that it was like that. Like I thought that it was kind of like a choice, and I didn't recognize like how prolific dysphoria is in a person's life, like how it just goes everywhere and affects sort of like every part of who you are. And so when you're living with gender dysphoria like that, it's important like when a person changes their pronouns, for example, from he him to she her. I used to be like, that's stupid. But now I recognize that that's like an important thing, and it's actually really hurtful to like misgender someone. I used to just think of it as like liberal nonsense. But now I'm like, oh, okay, I actually should respect a person's pronouns because it really like hurts them in a way that is serious. So we're just kind of discussing it.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna. I don't think this is like a new thing. It's kind of been around for a while.
It has. I'm just now learning about it though, because apparently my head was in the sand.
I'm gonna post something on the live text chat.
I always thought about it like like when people get really like upset about calling somebody like whatever they want to be called, like I always find that strange, right? Because like nobody is ever complaining about calling like a 400-pound biker tiny, right? No, but nobody's gonna be like, you're not tiny, you're big, like. But like with like certain groups, people are like, oh, and they get so worked up over about like what this person says they want to be called, like. Who, like, to me, I don't care. Like, if you want me to call you something, if you want me to call you this, I'll call you that. That's fine.
where do you guys think that, because I know for me, that sort of like bigotedness came out of religion, and that's actually the thing that sort of led to my, like, the beginning of my deconversion was I don't like the way that the teachings of my faith are compelling me to act towards people that I love. And so for me, that sort of, that caring about things which don't concern me really came from religion. And I wonder if you guys see it coming from other sources, or what you guys, where do you guys think that comes from?
Yeah, I would say religion is definitely an aspect, but I think a lot of that just comes down to just like community, right? So in any community, people would people tend to do that with other people in their community, right? So if you're from like a small town, everybody knows what Jim Bob did. Like Jim Bob does something, and everybody's like, "Oh, fucking Jim Bob did this the other day. Did you hear about this?" Right? Like it's just something that people are always in a community. I think people have. I don't know, maybe like an over invested interest in what other people are doing for some reason.
Yeah, and I did come from a small town. I didn't meet a transgender person until I was 22, and that was while I was in treatment. And I definitely wasn't very nice about it. And like, I wish I could go back in time, and I wish I could find that person and apologize, but they're no longer like on my social media or anything. So I have a little bit of a haunting guilty conscience.
Yeah. I started going to like raves and hanging out in like the club scene when I was like 15, 16. And they're just naturally like in that scene, there's drag queens. So like I had like a bunch of friends who were drag queens. So, like to me, it's like I don't know, I guess I was exposed to it from like the groups that I was hanging out in. It never bothered me, never.
When gay marriage was legalized in Minnesota, that morning, people showed up with a newspaper in high school. They showed up with a newspaper and they were pissed. Because it's a tiny little town, right? Most people were super conservative, and everybody was mad. Like, they were fucking raging. And I remember being like, I don't understand why everybody's so mad. Like, people should be able to do what they like. People should be able to get married. I wouldn't want, the religion of another person to make laws or dictate what is and isn't allowed. So why should mine, be able to make dictates? Like, people should be able to get married. But everybody was so angry and so pissed off. So if you came out and said,
yeah, how about the religion or lack thereof of people who live in a different community making the laws in your community? Are you okay with that?
No.
So people in New York think gay marriage should be okay, and therefore they take every law about it to the Supreme Court and get a federal mandate passed that.
Well, I mean, I guess as long as it's not
shall be allowed, even if the
I should say
various states
no,
aren't okay with it.
as long as it's not restricting anybody's rights.
Yeah.
So if
Exactly.
your religion says everybody should be able to do whatever the fuck they want, I will join that religion, and that is the one that we should have.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because I think there is a differentiation there between like if some religion was saying, "Hey, you guys have to pray to Allah every couple hours or whatever." Like it's forcing people to actually do something. If gay marriage is legalized, it's not forcing anybody to marry a gay person, right? Like it's just saying like, "Oh no, these people can get married if they want to."
Oh,
that's
marriage
like
is a sacred ritual with regards to the religion.
Well,
So
it is,
forcing somebody to recognize gay marriage if their religion is strictly anti-gay is essentially telling them how they can practice their religion.
I feel like, why are gay people seeking someone out to marry them who is a religion that's anti-gay?
Yeah,
I mean,
why do gay people want to get married at all? Like, how does that make any sense?
Because they want to show their commitment to one another.
Also in the United
States. And also taxes.
Yeah, also in the United States, like taxes, or like if somebody's in the hospital,
if you want them to be their beneficiary,
married, Yeah, they can't like they couldn't go and see their partner in the hospital if they weren't married, right? So I mean, there are legal benefits to it.
That's definitely a false myth that you can't go visit someone in the hospital if you're not married.
No,
to them.
not
I've
necessarily.
visited plenty of people in the hospital that I'm not married to.
But, like,
yeah, there is,
not
but like
always.
there are certain situations where like that does happen, right?
And
Yeah, it definitely does happen.
you can create a living will or a last will and testament to pass along your belongings to your partner.
But also,
you're
if
married
they
or
like,
not.
if you have a life insurance policy and you want your beneficiary to be your partner and not your children, you can't do that unless you're married.
Sure, that's bullshit.
Under
You can make your
under some
beneficiary anyone you
circumstances.
want.
Under some
I can
circumstances.
take a life insurance policy out on you if I want to, even though I don't even.
Yeah, they're
I don't
saying
even
that
know
what
you.
you're saying is like too simplistic, man. It's not true. Like,
who cares
I mean,
if we understand their motivation or not?
If they want to do it, they should be able to.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I'm for. I'm for people being free to do whatever they want in private as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And I think there's not a lot of people in here, at least at the moment, that would disagree with that. I think most people would say, yeah, go. If you want to have sex with someone of the same physical sex or different gender,
they should have all the rights as us,
sure,
as long as.
As
long as they're not like.
I'm talking
as long
about
as I
what
don't
I
like
believe.
have to dodge a sea of dicks and on my way to my car, like, then I'm fine.
But that's
like,
not, that's not in private. So what I'm trying to express what I think is the ought, and I don't want it to get muddied with what you think is the ought, but I think that activism about making other people accept your kinks in open public is probably a step too far. I think it's not a good idea to.
I think that a lot of them just are tired of
society as a whole to accept your abnormality. I'm like, it's okay for you to be abnormal,
but homosexuality is not an abnormality, and transgenderism is not an abnormality.
It is. So they're both abnormalities.
No, it's just variations in human sexuality. None. That's like saying
But they're like a pretty low percentage of the population. So I mean, they're not normal.
And they don't have. And they can't. No, there's no way that it can be abnormal. It essentially takes you out of the gene pool if you practice that behavior.
So does that mean that if I have polycystic ovarian syndrome and I can't reproduce, does that make me abnormal because I can't pass on my genes?
Yes.
So according to you, I have to be cisgender, able to reproduce, and attracted to the opposite sex in order to be normal.
Yes.
I think we can just disregard your opinion on that because that's a stupid idea.
Who cares what's normal though?
But what's wrong? What's wrong with saying that gay people or like transgender people are not the norm? I mean, they're not.
It's not.
I mean, it doesn't make what they do bad. It doesn't make them bad or wrong.
Yeah, like if you were to measure the attraction to the opposite sex of every person, there would be sort of a bell curve, and certain people would be extremely attracted to the opposite sex. And
if you were to measure whether or not people like sushi, there's going to be a bell curve. Does that mean I'm abnormal because I don't like sushi?
No, the mean of how attracted to the opposite sex you are is positive. Most people are attracted to the positive sex, and it's more than 2 standard deviations from normal to be.
Sure, but you're choosing one thing about a person's sexuality, and then using that to label them as normal or abnormal. Like, that seems a little bit bigoted to me.
Why? Like, how is that bigoted? I'm not saying that it's not okay, or that I don't respect their.
You're just like, I'm normal because of things that I can't do.
He's not making a moral
and you're
abnormal.
I'm just making his claim. It's fairly irregular. It's not even I don't know less than 30% of the population at most. Like even if you count.
But saying that they shouldn't be
oh my god, we're gonna debate this. That's like blatantly true. What you said is blatantly true.
I'm not arguing with the facts that you're saying. I'm saying that you're taking that and you're
But you're
saying that
calling
they
me
shouldn't be
stupid
allowed.
for realizing that. I think
Just
that's
let me say
no,
this.
no.
Let me finish. You have to let
Yeah,
me finish.
we can take people and isolate abnormal traits that they have. Sure. Yeah, fair
but
enough.
hold on, guys. Let's
Sure,
let
but it doesn't make them
Michaela
as a
finish.
person abnormal. And you're saying that we shouldn't allow them to participate in a public forum about things that make them unique because they're abnormal, and the rest of us shouldn't have to be subjected to their abnormality. That's what I think is bigoted.
No, I think people shouldn't be activists for traits that take them out of the gene pool because I value
Because that's all that matters to you.
reproduction. In the long run,
Wait
it's
a
all that
minute. Wait a
matters.
minute.
Yeah.
Which
Okay,
is
so it's
strange.
because you value reproduction. Do you think that if people are activists, which, hey, as a general rule, I think everybody should calm down on any topic, but do you think it's somehow going to hurt humanity's chances of reproduction? What difference does it make? Like, how does it hurt your?
Enough of us.
How does,
That's
I mean,
how
he said-
does it hurt your desire for reproduction?
It down regulates reproduction. Yeah.
That's fine. Like the Earth can't sustain all the humans that are on it anyway. So
Okay, but I'm trying to understand. Does it tangibly make reproduction decrease so it's less than it would have been if the gay people didn't just not talk about it? Like, is gay people talking about being gay or whatever, or anything that involves does not involve reproduction, does that actually lead to people who otherwise would have reproduced to not reproducing? Can you get talked into something like that?
Yes, it's a social contagion.
no, it's not. Oh my god.
That's a
Okay,
really good
so
point, Andy.
we're gonna talk. Let's talk about.
Yeah, Mrs. Miller,
let's
you
talk-
just did talk about how you watched a movie about it and it changed your mind. And
No, it helped. I learned facts
trans.
that I didn't previously know. So the point of activism, first of all, is not to turn people gay. It's to help people feel like they're not alone, so that we have less people killing themselves over this isolation that they feel, and it allows them to feel more comfortable. And then also we have less hate, like when there was the Pulse nightclub shooting, things like that. Like if there was more activism, more understanding about these people, then they are comfortable to be themselves and they're happier, and that leads to a happier and healthier society, and I think that's a great thing.
True.
Yeah.
Do I agree with people running around with vagina hats on and like being like nude around kids? Fucking no.
Yeah,
Definitely
no,
not.
that's also what I'm curious about is what you would think when it starts to get inappropriate, because I would also agree that there's some forms of what some people call activism that I think it's like
honestly, like naked activism is a harmless crime to be honest. Like yeah, I mean you can more or less bet like the kids, but
Dude, I have a great example because here's something that like
one
that
person at a time.
Are you a homosexual? Pax, on that statement that you just made that public nudity is not damaging to people. I'm paraphrasing. Are you a homosexual?
I'm a lifelong.
You know what, man? That's a completely irrelevant question. But I'm gonna give a troll answer. I'm gonna give a troll answer to that for lulz. Yeah, I'm a fucking homo, man. I'm a fucking homo.
That's also that's a question out of right field.
Hey, everybody, hang on a second.
Look at sexuality.
Wait a second.
Homo.
Everybody, stop talking for a second. Hang on.
No,
I just want to say that it's no business of anyone's, like what a person's sexual orientation is or what's between their legs. So we really don't have to be asking that about the other people in this chat, okay? Like Wednesdays are my chat. That's gonna be my rule, all right? No asking people about their sexuality if it's being done in a way that is not organic, okay?
Yeah,
or like
listen, man, I've sucked so. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm a homo. Okay, let's go with that, man. Where's this going?
No.
Yeah, what's the point? Like, what's your angle, Dylan?
Let me answer. Shut up for a second. Let me answer. If you look at the world through a heteronormative perspective, you can often find patterns of people that fall outside of the heteronormative sexuality to be pushing things that are not healthy. And so when you tell me, if you're not just talking off the cuff, but when you say that, when you claim that public nudity isn't harmful, I immediately wonder if you live a alternative sexual lifestyle, because
Who likes the public nudity of the girls with their boobies out?
Yeah, that's not healthy.
Well, I mean, I gave a troll answer, but yeah, do I have like an alternative lifestyle in that sense? Yeah, sure, in some ways, but not by being a homosexual.
So that's my point. And you could argue that my perspective is not the right perspective, and it is my perspective, but I'm arguing it as a perspective, not as my perspective. Heteronormativity, people that hold that view, they typically see things like public nudity as unhealthy because they value the sanctity of privacy of sexual unions. So
I'm sure that you could find a similar correlation among those who are not heteronormative.
Why is that?
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'm inclined to agree with him on this one. You know, I think intuitively that's probably true.
I do want to go to Loki on this question, being our resident nudist.
Actually, I identify as a naturist. Nudism is more commercial, but that's a line that takes more refined use of language than most people use. And I've also been one of the people tactically behind Santorelli and Schloss v. New York, which is the top free equality case, which is a bullshit case based on quirks of lawyering to make it equal protections easy to litigate and full First Amendment style rights not so in New York state law, but that's a defect in lawyers and politicians, you know, that disjoins people from the issues. Most cases of people obsessively pushing for bigoted oppression of nudists and naturists and skyclad pagans and even some skyclad Christian paths is based on, you know, overt or subconscious prejudice, and is very similar to other forms of oppression. You know, the suppression of nudity is based frequently on a warped view of sexuality, you know, that views seeing other people's bodies as if it's somehow a sexual assault on you or something, or clothing coercion as if it protects against, you know, automatic rape on site in bathrooms because of people who'd prey on each other in the same rooms, which, you know, if you start talking about transgender, you know, how does that work out if you have lesbians or gays and your policy is based on some fraud?
If that's true, why is public exhibitionism and voyeurism, why are those both sexual fetishes?
Because there's sexual
there's nothing wrong with having
if public nudity has nothing to do with affecting other people sexually or I have a hard time articulating this.
Because America was founded.
But let Dylan like state his point though.
Am I then influencing others to listen to music and not country? Like
in most cases, it doesn't. Think about a neon.
There's a scale between private monogamy, missionary sex, and orgies, and there's different views on that. And public nudity would veer away from the end of the scale of private, intimate monogamy.
No, it wouldn't. It has nothing to do with what shapes that. That's a whole larger set of values. And, there are nudists who very much have closed binary relationships that are polyamorous nudists.
Is somebody like supposed to be moderating, or am I supposed to be doing that? Because everyone's talking at once.
You're moderating.
I'm moderating?
If you want, Michaela, I'll moderate.
Yeah, or you can assign someone, Michaela. That's fine.
I wasn't sure. Sorry.
Yeah, Scott.
Everybody could just jump in and talk at once.
Yeah, Scott, why don't you take it for today if you don't mind?
I got it.
Okay.
you don't square it with them, those become separate issues that are different traits of people that are not driven by whether you're a nudist or naturist. Nudists are disproportionately school teachers, by the way, because in cold climates it happens to fit well with a summer vacation schedule for that profession, and generally they're not people who are doing it because they intend to be harming kids.
I think the whole thing with like the bathrooms,
society, so they want to have control over children.
I think that's people just sort of pushing their own agenda on an issue, which is really just a non-issue. Like all that the activists want is for children to grow up and feel comfortable with who they are and be nice to others and not judge them based on things that they can't change. So things like the bathroom issue of like a bunch of people are going to go in and just be perverts. It's like that's never happened. And also it's like if you were like take someone who's transitioning. So say you're transitioning from you're born a female, but you just know that you're a male, and now you have to go. You look like a male, you dress like a male, everything about you says male. What if you walk into a bathroom, people who don't know you, and then a bunch of girls see a guy in the bathroom, and they're gonna be like, "What the fuck? Why are you in here?" You know?
Exactly.
Well, how about just ungendering bathrooms in the first place,
Yeah,
so that you have a bathrooms for humans? You know what the biggest issue of ungendering bathrooms is that's not driven by bigotry and political frauds? It's the fact that waterless urinals exist, and even flush urinals use way less water and take less room space than toilets, so it makes for a more efficient facility. But other than Europe, where they have some plastic clips to help out, females don't tend to get trained to use them. So, yeah. But other than that, why do you have gendered bathrooms in the first place?
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like, honestly, I was a janitor for a long time. I've cleaned bathrooms where guys just walk in and whip their dick out and don't even notice that I'm in there. They just walk past the signs, and I'm like, oh, all right. This is happening, and it's like it's fine. Nobody's gonna be like.
It's women that care about that. You're making the false anecdotal evidence. Women.
Well, I'm not saying that this is a basis for any like empirical evidence. I'm just telling a story.
In front of male bodies.
There are a lot of guys who are very homophobic about being around other guys. So,
yeah, but I do want to point out,
it's a personal development issue. It's not one sex or one sexuality in particular.
But I do want to point out, Michaela made a very good point, because anytime you hear people like freak out about the bathroom situation, it's always about men who transition to women.
Because there's a person with a penis coming in this bathroom, so now they're gonna rape me. Like no.
But there are women.
I mean, the reason they're concerned about man transitioning to women is because of their gynocentric views about protecting women.
No, because there are women that transition to men who go on testosterone, have beards and fucking. I mean, they look like fucking dudes, right? And if that person walked in to a female bathroom, people would be like, "What are you doing in here?" Right? So like, it literally always is just this idea of like a man who transitions to a woman. It's never a woman who transitions to a man. It's not even something that even comes up, right? Now
yeah, they're supposed to be concerned about like creeps, like harassing women and girls. Like
that's not. I think it's only it's only an issue. No, it's only an issue because of the gender fluid idea, where someone can just declare themselves the other gender and then they get to use the other bathroom.
Yeah, like what they think is that somebody's gonna say, "Oh, I'm a woman now, and now I'm gonna go in here because I can, and I'm gonna hurt some people." But that's
like what happened in Virginia the other month, where the same boy was allowed to go in the girl's bathroom and ended up raping someone, and they covered it up for political reasons, and then he did.
Yeah, I remember that. That girl was like roasted. That sucked.
That's not even trans, right? It's like the guy's not even trans, and he's just claiming to be another gender so he can get.
We have current events that disprove that. We have the We Spa riots that took place over the summer in LA, and it was a self-identifying trans person, a male-bodied person with a penis going in the female locker room, and it made women feel uncomfortable. This person was not a back and forth person. This person was a person that was living their life as a transgender, male to female. And the women are uncomfortable with that. Women are the majority of women are uncomfortable with male-bodied men in their places where they disrobe and become vulnerable, and that's a reasonable discomfort.
So like I opened this by talking about how I was in treatment with a transgender, a male to female transgendered person. And we were uncomfortable having them around us because they had anger issues and they weren't very far into their transition, but they still identified as a woman, and we had a hard time with it. But guess what? That's something we had to deal with. Because as hard of a time as we were having with it, imagine how she felt. Feeling like she didn't fit in with all these other women, and we weren't always super nice to her because we were uncomfortable. And that we shouldn't have been that way.
And your natural female desires to feel safe in a female environment being invaded by a man dressing up like a woman is that's a rational discomfort.
That's not what's happening.
Oh, how awful.
Wrong. Wrong. By the way, do you know what the acronym DRAB stands for? Yeah,
drag.
It doesn't show up much since the 19.
Drag is different than transgender. Drag is guys who are.
Everybody knows what drag stands for, right?
Are you saying G or B? Drab or drag?
Drag.
I'm comparing drab and B and G.
Drag are homosexual men that dress up like women for campy, theatrical.
Because they like it.
Actually, they're not necessarily homosexual, even.
Yeah,
and if you look at the transition of clothing styles over decades, there are a lot of very cisgendered people who
drag is a homosexual male practice.
No, it's not. Yes, it is. You're going to tell me that Corey Taylor is homosexual? No.
Since it seems like
there's a difference between drag and cross-dressing, or drag and like doing theatrical.
I'm talking about full drag, going out there in makeup and dressing like a woman, wearing the shoes and the wig and everything. Corey Taylor's done that multiple times.
Go to a gay bar and ask a drag bar what drag is. It's
well, if you go to a gay bar, they're probably all gay. So you're cool as cute.
Okay, look, I'm sure a lot of it is gay men, but you can't just make the claim that it's all gay men.
Drag,
drag and transgender are different anyway.
Drag is gay performance. Go to any drag show in any drag bar and ask them what drag.
Just because a lot of them are gay, it doesn't mean that it's only gay.
Are you saying that most drag queens are fucking homos or all of them?
Some
are
of them
homos?
are commercial performers,
I'm saying that drag
is
a theatrical, campy thing that homosexual men do. Drag. That's what drag
is. It's a campy thing that is done by men, but not necessarily always homosexuals.
Just say not all, so we can end this argument.
Drag is a homosexual thing.
No, Dylan's doubling down.
Guys,
you're wrong on that. But drag stands for historically dressed as a girl. Drab stands for dressed as a boy. Except females dressing in pants and jeans and traditionally male clothes have become so common for work or recreation that whole stereotype as something unusual has broken down, whereas drag has been commercialized and sexualized in ways where if you go back probably before I was born, and before most of us were ever born, they were a pair of what were considered to be socially abnormal conditions. And
it's interesting. I never knew that. The drab with a B is no longer used that way, and it's interesting to hear the origins of that, because drab with a B is now used as aesthetically plain or boring, and
which
so
makes sense because like
yeah.
women's clothes tend to be more ostentatious. Is that the word? I mean, as a woman who dresses primarily in men's clothing because it's more comfortable and has more utility, I never understood why, like even when I was a bigoted asshole, I never understood why it's okay for me to wear men's clothes, but it's not okay for a man to wear female's clothes. Like that double standard never really made sense to me.
Maybe it's okay for you to wear men's clothes.
I do want
It
to
is okay for me to wear
say,
men's
in
clothes.
terms of what
Thank
you were
you.
saying about anger issues,
The
I've
other way to say
run internet communities and been involved in civil rights activism for a long time, and I've been asked to help people with trans issues, including like the school students are complaining, so the admins or the president of a government-run school said, "Why don't you just not use a bathroom when you're on campus?" And like, what the fuck, idiot?
How about you educate others?
Obviously,
Like,
help people, but every trans person I've known, and I've known some through Unitarian circles who are very, pansexual supportive as churches go, and some through activist communities. I've actually helped run events on sexuality.
Honestly, though, why do people make such a big deal out of that issue? Why do trans people make a big issue out of bathrooms?
Let me tell you why they make a big deal out of
by
bathrooms.
definition, if you get a DSM listed psych condition and something that's hard to deal with in society, you're coping with stuff that's probably hard for you personally and hard in society.
It's all fine and dandy. Like, yeah, they have to deal with stigma and mental issues that plague their community. But why don't they go to the other bathroom then? Like,
because let me explain it. Let me explain it. So say you have a female to or a male to female person transitioning. Number one, they don't want to see, like, they have dysphoria. They're not comfortable with their own male member. They don't want to see a bunch of other ones. Secondly, they feel as a woman, and so as a woman, as feeling as a woman, they may feel uncomfortable being around men in that situation. 3, they may have the appearance of a woman, and it might be dangerous for them to go into the men's room, say, why is there a woman in here? Or if they're facing like bullying, for example, by the other men, they might, the men can be pretty mean, and it's like there's a number of reasons.
It sounds like a problem that's easily solved. I mean, like, well, I mean, I guess, like, next time you go out in public and you feel like you're gonna have to use the bathroom, like, dress in a manly way or a womanly way.
The easiest way to solve it is when if you're in the bathroom and you think
one point.
Let's let Mario guy finish talking. Andy, I think it was.
Yeah, I'm just thinking. I think the easiest solution is to just, like what I said earlier, you really could just calm down and just go on with your day. I mean, if I was going to the bathroom and what do you know? That guy looks like that guy might actually technically be female. Okay, I guess I'll just do nothing and then just go on with my day. Like, who cares? Like, I'm not hurt. Nobody's getting.
There's been places where the transgender youth they can only go to the bathroom in like the nurse's office because of like the laws or the rules of the school. So like, wouldn't that suck if something that you can't change means that you have to go all the way to the nurse's office to pee?
Well, you have a legal right to equal protection and freedom from oppression.
Loki, let me just make one point real quick. Pack said earlier he said something along the lines of why are trans people so concerned with bathrooms? I don't think it is trans people. Like trans people are not passing laws to restrict who can go to what bathroom, right?
Yes, thank you.
Trans people, right? So like, I mean the framing of that I think is incorrect. I just want to put that out there.
They're just trying to go to the bathroom where they feel comfortable
not all
going to the
trans
bathroom,
people, but like
and everybody else is like,
media,
no.
That talk about how like poor tranny that's not allowed to go into like the woman's restroom or the men's restroom. Like,
but if that was you, you were just trying to go to the bathroom. Just a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
If that was you and you were just trying to go take a piss, and everybody was like freaking out at you and yelling at you, oh, you're in the wrong one, and you're like, well, I look like a female, but I have the biology of a male, so what the fuck? Like, why is everybody freaking out at me? I'm just trying to pee. Like,
you just need to go to the bathroom.
I guess I have better coping mechanisms than that, to be honest with you. I mean,
yeah, but if you have dysphoria,
I could either not care
you don't speak
and
for
take
that
a
community,
piss, or I could go to the other bathroom if they don't want me there.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
you don't have dysphoria.
I mean, why don't?
So you're like, what you would do and what I would do doesn't mean anything.
Also, isn't it easier to just relax and try and accept the situation yourself instead of insisting other people do something differently?
Oh, that's what I have to say for both the conservative freakouts over trannies and the transgender who make a big fuss out of the bathroom drama issues.
But it's like if somebody was telling you where you could and couldn't pee, like you might be a little frustrated too.
Yeah, no, that's it.
Hold on. That's the issue, Pax. Though is like are people who are transgender passing laws that say, hey, you have to accept us in this bathroom? No, that's not happening. What's happening is people are passing laws that are saying, no, somebody can't come in here unless they're like they have the XY chromosome. And even once you get to that point, who is there to regulate that? Do we need to have somebody at like every time you walk into a bathroom? Do we need to have like a security there checking somebody's
You have to show your driver's license to get into the
honestly, Scott, I mean, that's a fair, reasonable point to make. Okay. Fair enough.
For that job, your name would legally have to be Karen if that was your job.
Yeah, so it's not like the transgender who are like passing legislation when it comes to like bathroom issues. It's the hysteric traditionalists, whatever, who are doing so. And
the same people who try to restrict nudity based on their own religious dogma, which is a fundamentally and overtly illegal reason to legislate an issue, where it's technically a felony under federal law if that's not enforced effectively to do that. And instead of immunity, we need to lock up legislators who don't say no to their constituents who demand things like that.
Yeah, so like what about like if somebody fully transitions, they have, the bottom surgery and they've legally changed their gender, like their driver's license says female and they don't have a thing down there, do they still have to use the men's room? Because like what if the only toilet stall is taken? That would suck.
And usually there's a lot of messiness in these laws and in the news media. Building codes do not specify the term gender. They use the term sex many times for bath and locker rooms, and that is a form of institutionalized bigotry embedded in building codes, which should have been eliminated the same way race discrimination. A lot of southern states used to require 4 bathrooms: black males, black females, white males, white females. And of course, they also had laws that are talked about in books of banning blacks from sitting down at the white lunch counter. Well, I didn't learn until I was relatively old that that's not entirely true. They played the separate but equal game. They had laws banning whites from sitting down at black lunch counters too. They just never enforced those, and they were rarely tested. But how many genders
I feel like
are
that
there?
is actually a good parallel, because I mean it's like if we have it's like I can't remember who said it earlier. If we have a female to male person using the men's room, that's nobody really cares about that. But if there's a male to female using the female's room, the ladies' room, then everybody freaks out. So that's actually a really good allegory, and I actually tend to agree with that.
But why should there be male and female discrimination, which is illegal, if just because some people are used to certain social prejudices? But we can ban the race segregation, but not the sex segregation as a violation.
I think we're getting there.
The rights law.
Like I think that's part of why there's so much activism in that area, is because people want these things to sort of come to light so that it can make it all the way to the legislation. So like I think that's a really good point, and that is another reason for activism in that community, I think.
if
even
this
Yale
is a
law
proposition, I have a question for you. Would you propose that this boundary between the two in terms of like categorization for anything is removed, such as sports?
What do you mean?
Like, should we just have, no male, female
like
separated sports? Everything is just male, female sports all together. No
like
segregation.
That's already a thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
But like, would you guys extend this integration of
it's really
sexes
not.
to like all sports, or for example? Or
I think sports is where it becomes a little bit tricky. Like that, I feel like has to be done on a case by case, sport by sport thing. Like I don't think we can have blanket legislation for that.
Why?
Yeah, and I do want to say, let's go back to Concept Hut, and then we got Dal in the channel. I'm a Hummingbird, K-Con, Neurotic Shrimps in here now. Uncle Rob, guys, pop in. What do you guys got? First off, Concept, yeah, finish what you're saying, but I was just throwing that out to everybody else to join in.
Right. I just want to know if all these separations between men and women should be separated, but in all situations. Do you believe that is the case?
I mean, look at jiu-jitsu. I'm a female and I train with a male coach. There's not really a lot of women in the sport, but when you we all train together. But then when you look at tournaments, you want to sort of match up based on like your gender and your relative weight. So I mean, like there are times when it should be separated and times when it doesn't matter. Like if there was like a trans person at my gym, I wouldn't care. Like I'd be like, you're a person, I'll still roll with you. You know what I mean? But if there's a trans person maybe in a competition that I'm in, there might be some issues there depending on how far, depending on
body mass and whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's why I don't think that we can just have like a one size fits all answer for that.
Should that answer be applied based on bodies and not on sex?
Real quick, go ahead, Doolittle.
Yeah, whenever you have something like an organized sport or a franchise or something like that, the participants have to be willing to participate with one another. And that's really where the line gets drawn. If everyone's okay with, let's just say some girl wanted to be a quarterback and she's good enough to get in the NFL, then she can go in the NFL. And I don't think any guy is going to say like, we don't want a girl in the NFL. I mean, some people are going to because
they might because they don't want to tackle a girl.
Yeah, but if a girl's good enough to be in the NFL, the rules aren't going to prohibit that. But if there was someone that was like not Kobe Bryant, but like a third-rate NBA basketball player, like they're not going to let him in the WNBA because he would totally outclass every single person on the court, and it would be great for him, but it wouldn't be great for the sport because there's a female class in basketball that's it's because there's a useful delineation where the best females can compete against the best females, and for a guy to step down to that level, he's not amongst the best guys at all to be, so like it wouldn't make sense to have that delineation where you let guys go down to the females but females would be, if the best female player in the world wanted to play in the NBA and she made the team, I'm sure like that would be welcomed, I'm sure.
Right. So the point of the question here is that we have things like that in sports, as well as the weight classes, because it gives people a better opportunity to interact in that space. There are reasons for these things. It's not just, we're sexist or whatever. It has nothing to do with that. Like weight classes is the best way to look at that.
If it was one sex powerlifting, there would be zero females with the opportunity to compete on the world stage.
Yeah, and like there's been some like drama in that in the weightlifting community of trans women, so male to female folks competing in the women's division and just annihilating them. So that's why I would say, like, but if a female to male wants to play on the men's soccer team, or a male to female wants to play on the female soccer team, like things like that, sports like that depend more on like sort of teamwork and less on individual just sheer strength, I think should have looser rules.
Yeah. So what do you believe the origination of separating bathrooms is between men and women?
I think it's just something we kind of always did. I don't know the history.
I mean, they're not going to just do it just because, no reason. There is a reason.
Have you ever been to a music festival? There is no separation. It is porta potties and family bathrooms.
That's not the same thing. A porta potty is a one-stall situation.
Yeah, I think the origination of that is from Roman bathhouses. Is the first time like we can see a differentiation between male and female facilities, right? And I don't know what that necessarily says about anything, but I think that's like in Greece.
Is that where it came from?
There wasn't that delineation, but in like Rome, they did have like male and female bathing houses, right? So,
yeah. So
I don't know what the precipice for that was, but I think that's.
I think bathing.
I believe it's quite a bit like the sports thing. Is that it's not so much for the protection of the men, or it's the protection of women. Women, are wanting in that case to, when they're doing a private thing, when they're in an enclosed space where it's harder for outsiders or, bystanders to actually like see any wrongdoing. They want that space to have some kind of boundary space. Because, yeah. Because if you see a dude walk in there, there's some funny business probably going on. So that's the only way that, from a bystander point of view, that you can see something might be going wrong. But if you just say, okay, well, everybody go in here, now you have an enclosed space where there's not a lot of people in there, and where all the bystanders are outside the restroom doing their own thing that has nothing to do with restroom stuff. And it makes it harder to...
Is there reasons to believe that those motivations for segregating bathrooms are true? Like, does it really make women safer?
I would assume.
I mean, women can be assaulted by other women, and men can be assaulted by other men.
That's true, but that doesn't really say anything about like the trend of that.
Prevalence of it.
I can be hit by lightning, but it's more likely that I'm going to be poisoned by
men
food.
Are like, I mean, look at men. How often is a man raped by a woman? I mean, this is a little bit off topic, but like man on man violence is more.
And think about the opposite.
I mean,
actually, the most prevalent rape case is actually men raping other men.
Yeah, but that's in an enclosed space where it changes the dynamic.
So it's like even if the men are in an enclosed space with just men, there's still going to be that problem.
Yeah, I mean,
so it kind of makes that argument irrelevant.
No, it actually strengthens the argument to say that men are more typical to rape men and women than the other way around.
Anyway, we're kind of straying from the topic a little bit. If we can just...
Because there are studies that show that nudists and naturists are less likely to rape at all than people who are textile compulsives, and that may have something to do with the fact that they tend to be higher socioeconomic status with better education and better economic status and better socially disciplined to not think of that as something normative they intend to do.
I really like the textile compulsive part.
Normative.
And the clothes don't overcome on the lower SES trends to be more likely to be rapists.
Honestly, man,
public nudity should be legal. Like, for fuck's sake, man. Like,
there's no justification.
How can men can be topless, but women can't? Like, I just have some fat under my nipples. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to see a bunch of titties flying around. I don't like when my guys try to take off their shirts either. But I think if guys should be allowed, then women should be allowed too. Why can they just put pasties on?
Because one is
the nipple
more
and then it's
sexually
fine. It makes no
interesting.
sense. It's so arbitrary.
It's not really arbitrary. It's because we're differently attracted to these things. If you want to reduce it down to
I'm not talking about attraction. I'm talking about equality.
No, I'm saying if you reduce it down to just like just some fat, you might as well just say, well, murder is ridiculous because we're all just a collection of particles.
But concept. I want to point out something to you though, right? So we can look back at the entire, like, I think we all agree here that humans evolved, right? So if we know humans evolved for the absolute, for 99.9% of the time that humans have been around, we've just been like people who are probably just walking around naked, right? When you say, oh, a naked woman is more provocative than a naked man, that's more,
maybe to you, a man.
That's more along the lines of where you are, of societal, the way society has like groomed you to be, right? So like in the United States, you can see like a woman naked on the street and you're gonna say that's provocative, but in like Saudi Arabia, if you see a woman showing some ankle, you're gonna be like, that bitch is showing ankle, like we need to take her out, dude, that's way too much.
Or if you're like me and you're asexual, you see anybody without a shirt on and you're like, oh, put a shirt on. Like, I don't want to be seeing any of that. Just because I don't want to see it doesn't mean people shouldn't be allowed to show it. That's a me problem.
Has a textile compulsive bias, right?
But that also sounds more common among homophobic guys. Yeah, from what I've seen over the years, and it's not justifiable as a public policy. But New York State used to ban guys, from having their chests uncovered in public too, but that got changed back early 1900s during a couple of incredibly hot summers in the days before air conditioning was common, when people were just flouting the law so much that they finally changed it. But
That's
all
awesome.
of New York State nudity law got tossed out in the 1970s on civil rights grounds, but then the corrupt legislature tried to find devious ways to circumvent the court order. And some friends of mine, like Morley Schloss, is a public school teacher from the Midwest, who now is down in Florida, semi-retired, running Sunsport Gardens Nudist Resort. But he and his ex-wife and a number of us as friends and associates figured out creative tactics to overturn part of that replacement state law in the late 1980s, early 90s, in Santorelli Schloss et al. V. New York, which is a top free equality case, not a full nudity case, because of problems in the law, that basically the court recognized that it is institutionalized bigotry and unjustifiable constitutionally to require females to be treated differently than males as to dress. Plain and simple, and anything other than that is fundamentally wrong.
Let's get back to the topic at hand. There's some people in the chat from whom we haven't heard yet. I don't know everybody's names. Sorry,
we got Simba, Snark has popped in. Uncle any comments yet? Dal hasn't chimed in yet.
Let's hear from all of you in descending order of, I don't care. You can all just say it. Just talk one at a time.
I mean, I think any point that I would make has been said already, but
say it anyway.
I learned first off, I learned a lot about like the nudism angle. The nudism arguments that Loki was making were awesome. Big Lebowski said something earlier that I didn't think of at all, and it was great. Basically, I don't think there's a reason for us to have gendered bathrooms, really. It doesn't make, I don't think it's a necessity, whereas including everyone in our society is more of a necessity. Sports, it becomes a little weird, but overall, I would just say sports are a game anyway, so why don't we choose arbitrary limits of what, like, you could have muscle density, you don't have to use gender or sex or whatever, but I'm interested in seeing how we figure it out, because I think we're headed the right direction.
Cool. Next person.
Speak. To kind of just like say something. When you're talking about gender in the bathrooms, I feel like a lot of what you're talking about is kind of glossing over the real value and pull of society and the way we function as a society. When you start to go way back to evolution, kind of starts to take away the value of or the demerits of the society that we kind of built up.
How do you mean?
I am fairly sure that if I were to ask most of the guys around me if they have a problem with another guy going into a woman's bathroom, they would probably say yes. That's not a thing of that, just from evolution. It's like, that's just a societal thing. We've all come to an agreement that that's not okay. So if we just throw that out of the window, does that kind of feel a bit wrong in a way?
No,
it doesn't feel wrong to me.
But hold on. Well, that's the thing with society, because society can just say like, "Oh no, that is okay now," right? So if we're saying these things have no fundamental value, evolutionally speaking, and it's all societal based, we can't just say, "Oh, because we as a society we value this thing now, so that means it has value." Wrong, right? So like that thing can easily be thrown out.
I disagree with you there.
Well, because at one point as a society, we agreed it was okay and good to have slaves, right? But then society changed and said, no, slavery's not good, right? So these social norms or these social moralities change over time, right? So like the idea of a bathroom being only for this person or this person, if it's completely societal based, then it can be thrown out at any point. Nobody's like, that's just the way it is, right? Well, it's a society will just come to it.
The change is something that would be a positive, that would have a positive effect. But at the same time, I don't think that just making it, let's say, a law. Note that I'm from a place where all of this is not going to be talked about in any real sphere. But like, if you were to just say, oh, now bathrooms are gender free, then I don't think that would really change things, other than just making it confusing for most people.
Well, not at first, but it's like any societal change. Like if we're like, because again, you brought up society, and like societal changes work over periods of time. So it's not like anybody's going to come in and say, okay, we changed the way we're doing it now, and we expect everybody to just be comfortable with it. That's not the way it works. Like when something changes in society, it takes time for it to percolate. You know, it takes time for that to actually permeate the zeitgeist, I guess is the best way to say it.
Change takes time, basically.
Yep.
The human adaptation to sociological change takes time, but if there's a civil or human rights violation, it's overdue to change it immediately, even if humans have trouble adapting as quickly.
Okay.
So
let's hear.
in my,
I don't
Have you heard
consider
from?
like segregated bathrooms to be like an egregious like human rights violation, but I mean, you know,
If we could just, if we could hear from Keith, or I don't think we've heard from Shrimp or Simba, Snark or Uncle Rob yet. I might have missed someone, but Keith, what do you think?
Sorry, I'll let Keith go.
Trannies. Yeah.
Sorry?
Trannies.
Transgendered folks. Tranny is your transmission. Okay.
No, I don't say that anymore. That's very old school. It does sound really
okay
weird. It's a weird way to say it. It's like it's kind of infantilizing, a group that should be respected.
I still think of a core transmission.
Right. It's
Humor
only
doesn't
now
imply disrespect necessarily. It depends on your personality and style.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead, Keith.
The bathroom thing, I don't really care too much about. I think there are a lot of cultural differences in how cultures choose to handle like people smelling each other's poop and whatever. I definitely do have a bone to pick with trans activism. And I do feel like it's being hijacked for a variety of different causes.
What causes?
Well, activism has an agenda, right? And
yes,
I just
to make people feel like they're not crazy and weird and keep them from hanging themselves in the woods.
Well, that's what it could look like on its face. But I mean, activism commonly leads to really bad things, and I don't want to like.
I'm going to need examples. I'm not going to just let you gloss over that.
What that? So, activism.
What bad things specifically?
Well, let's just So you gave a definition of what activism does. You're saying it's always positive, and I think it's not always positive. And I just want to posit that like the trans community is a very small community, and it's being spoken for by many, many large communities as if it is a monolith. And I believe that we don't even know what trans people as a group think, because I don't think trans people participate in the groupthink that we're being sold. And
so maybe your issue is less with activism itself and more of how it's being done.
Well, these days I do have an issue with activism itself. I don't know, I'm older than I used to be, and I used to be super down, and I grew up in the Bay Area too, and like Oakland.
You said you had issues with the transgender activism, right?
Yes.
That's what he's talking about. Keep going.
Yeah, but like you asked him for examples, Michaela, and he hasn't given examples yet. Like what are some examples?
Well, he did. He gave an example.
I can get into it. I mean, but people are asking me other questions too. But so first off, like, transitioning, the medical procedure of transition is very serious, and transitioning with, pre-puberty age people, I think should be questioned. And I think we should handle that with extreme skepticism. And we're seeing a statistical trend of a major increase. And part of this is, so this is connected to social points that is related to activism. So we're seeing a huge rise in younger children that are being encouraged to be individuals and to express themselves. And they are being rewarded with extra social points by coming out as identifying as a different gender. And
that's not necessarily the case.
But I do want to say, KCON, if you say if you say something statistically, can you post those statistics so we can all see them? Post those statistics in the live text.
I don't really feel like trying to break my train of thought and finding an article and get into like article wars, but
you can
I
find
guess
it later.
We could find it later. Maybe I could post something later. There's if you
So
ever
I think
you can listen to a podcast with Deborah So. She was in that field of research, and what the research suggests is that there's a huge uptick in people that are coming out in trans, and that as they become older, it turns out that they're in a stage of not sure how they identify, but since there is social encouragement to come out as trans, they're saying that, but then later they turn out to just be normally gay. And so there's a large...
If we could address your points as you make them, or else personally I'm going to forget. I think that what you're saying definitely is valid and has validity. I think that part of the responsibility does fall to the parents, and they need to be educated on what gender dysphoria truly is, and not just it needs to be diagnosed by a professional, and it's not something to be taken lightly. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, you think you're a boy, let's start you on hormone blockers.
And it's like illegal for a parent to like prevent their kid from getting transition therapy. Like parents don't have that control.
Is that true, or is that just that thing that Jordan Peterson was afraid of like a couple of years ago?
I'm pretty sure it
varies among states, and there is one group that moved down from the DC suburbs down to a more rural part of Virginia near me that is called like Parents and Friends of Ex-Gays and Lesbians, which pushes reparative therapy policy. But then there are a lot of states that have made that medical malpractice for doctors to support it. It's a political hot potato with a lot of chaos and variation in different jurisdictions.
Damn.
I kind of
so like what you're saying, Keith. I think that I don't think this is just my opinion. I think it is the general consensus. I could be wrong. That parents need to be discerning, and they need to be smart about it, and not just jump in with both feet before there's been sufficient evidence to indicate true gender dysphoria. So in some ways, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
A lot for the average parent, though. Even if they don't have religious prejudice and bigotry, which are common even for kids in less anomalous conditions.
You can look up, there's some really good work by this, a podcaster, interviewer, Benjamin Boyce. He was kind of involved with, he was actually going to the school at Evergreen when the whole thing went down with Brett Weinstein and stuff. He interviews a lot of people that transitioned and detransitioned. And the people that detransitioned, their voices aren't really being heard right now because there is this loud amplification pushing for trans rights and people that need to be heard, and they just need to transition to feel better and stuff, and there's a lot of encouragement towards that, but then there's a lot of people that detransition that are like, man, I really wish I hadn't have made that leap thinking it would make me feel better, because those were some of the worst people.
Are there stats on that? Is this like a significant amount of trans people, or?
Yeah, what percentage are we talking about here? Because you say
what percentage of people are actually trans? That's what I'm saying.
Exactly. What percent of people are trans, but what percent of people who are trans who convert then deconvert? And you're so basically what you're saying is like the amount of trans people, the percentage is so low, we shouldn't take what they're saying and just like ascribe that to society, right? But then all of a sudden what you're saying is like, but the amount of trans people who've deconverted, what we should do is take those people's position and ascribe that to society,
which is an even smaller number of people.
So let's just be careful with what I'm saying, and just hear me out. And because I'm saying that listen, I'm saying that the voice of transition is being amplified, and the voice against transition is being suppressed. So
there's a lot of evidence that's true.
Let's let Keith finish. Hang on, let Keith finish.
The very categories of fuzzy boundaries.
Hang on a second, Loki. Let's let Keith finish.
Well, no, that's all I was saying before people were putting words in my mouth, that I'm saying don't listen to these people and listen to these people. Like I'm saying that we're not getting an accurate overall picture because activist groups are choosing to amplify certain messages and ignore other messages.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah,
that's I mean, that's everything. That's everything in life, of course, right? So
yeah.
I mean, I mean, you have to get past this idea of like, you have to get past the idea because like this one group is amplifying a message that necessarily makes that like I will necessarily disregard that message, right? So like you can't do that. You have to look at the actual information and not at the people talking about that information.
So don't be so like black and white about things. Like educate yourself on both sides of a topic.
Yeah,
but you got to see that this topic of trans activism is like ripe for the picking. Like it's such a small group.
Yeah.
That you
Well,
can
and
say,
I think we see that in like also in all types of issues. You know, whether it's like guns or whatever the issue is. There's always going to be a side that is
really high on the intersectionality scale. So it has a ton of social points, and there's not enough voices. It's such a small group that it's easy to be used because there's not enough voices to counter it. So you can.
Yeah, and I think the point that you're making about trends being harmful. So like if it appears to the children that being transgender is like a trendy thing, that they might do that. That sort of thing kind of exists also with like self-harm, where it's the trendy thing to do, so people are doing it because it makes you different, you know what I mean? And as someone who's done that a lot, you guys know my history, that kind of thing is frustrating to see. So where activism in that area and sort of normalizing the behavior is helpful for people experiencing it, it's not always helpful for those not experiencing it, and then they see it and they think, oh, this will make me unique. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to sum it up. I mean, I feel like there's just so many aspects to this that keep on getting hijacked by trying to say apparently what trans people want and what they need. Like another
just
example,
let them speak for themselves.
Instead of an example aside from the transitioning, the whole gender fluidity and gender as a social construct thing, to me, there's no clear evidence that the trans community as a whole believes in that. And when I hear from the experience of trans people, to me, and it makes a lot of sense, they're just trying to say, I was born as a male, but I feel like a girl, and I want to identify as a girl. Simple as that. They don't wake up one day feeling like something else. They don't. They recognize biological sex. It's very real to them.
There's been a certain degree of debate amongst the LGBT community whether or not T should be considered in that, because it's not a sexual orientation, it's a form of dysphoria. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, and I think a lot of them would agree with you too.
And dysphoria is the spectrum too, and we make blanket statements about like someone that we think is experiencing dysphoria, that it's this like extreme level of pain, but it might be a mild discomfort.
Could just be mild dysphoria, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
you're making some really good points here, Keith.
Response to abnormal conditions or an abnormal response to normal conditions, so it's not a valid debate unless you discern a little more factual detail.
Can you be more specific? Can you explain that again?
I think we should hear from some more people. I think
I'm
thanks for calling on me.
I'd like to make a quick note before moving on, just to speak to the social contagion part. Social contagion is extremely powerful, so powerful in fact that it applies to suicide. When a famous person commits suicide, a lot of people, you see an uptick in suicide. So even something as crazy and detrimental as, hey, killing yourself, that is something, that can be uptick just by massive talking about it.
Exactly. What?
Let's hear. Oh, sorry.
All right, can I?
Yeah, I think Doolittle was trying to get a word in there.
I don't remember.
Simba and Snark. Simba and Snark have been in here for a bit, just listening. I don't know if you got anything neurotic. I don't know if you've got any.
I'm trying to get my person.
All right, so
I want to say that there is a case in British Columbia in Canada, where I live, that the father went to court and he could not stop his child's child's transitioning. He could not stop it, so it's out of the father's hand in that case. So it is happening in Canada.
Yeah,
that's not just a Petersonian made up, kind of.
Yeah, but how much control should a parent have over their child?
Exactly.
I don't think the child has the ability to make a decision what gender they are. I think that children are very impressionable.
How old is the
I
child?
think there's a big trend right now
what
to be
age was
tranny
that
because it does
child?
get you attention. And
well, let's look it up.
The age matters. Because, let me give you a specific
I linked
example.
it in live text.
How much?
CBC article in live text.
Hey, Scott, let me ask you that question in a different form. The same question Scott asked. How much influence should a non-parent adult have over a child?
It depends if the parents are shitty.
Yeah, I think the parents have more vested interest in the children than anyone else.
Yeah. So so if there's a conflict between a parent, if there's a conflict at
that's like ridiculously simplistic, man. Honestly,
if I could offer an anecdote, I'd like to offer
someone
an
else
anecdote.
cares about your child more than you.
Well, okay, so my parents, I have an
in a lot of
anecdote.
cases, yeah.
Hold on, guys. Let's Michaela go ahead. Let's take turns, guys.
Right. So this is my anecdote in terms of the medical transitioning stuff. Anecdote. When I was growing up, and so I have a neurological disorder. I talk about it a lot. It's a big part of my life. I have a neurological disorder. It's kind of changed my whole life, but there were signs of it along the way. There were definitely signs. And my parents, even when I was into my teens and early 20s, they would it was a small town, and my stepmom would talk to my doctor and so that my doctor wouldn't talk to me. So I was essentially not in charge of my own medical well-being, and so they wouldn't listen to me. The doctors wouldn't talk to me. They would talk to my parents. My parents were sort of dictating what was happening. By parents, I mean parent, singular. And that was absolutely not in my best interest. What they thought was in my best interest was not, because if one doctor would have just listened to me about these crazy symptoms I was having and done some actual tests and studies, we could have caught this before it became this giant wrecking ball in my life and changed literally the entire course of most likely the rest of my life. So a parent does not always know best when it comes to their child's medical things. So my parents did not have my best interest in mind. They did not give a shit, and they just wanted to do what they wanted to do. So it's definitely not the case that all parents always know best.
Like that claim was obviously
one of your
false,
parents had a substantial psych disorder that resulted in abuse too, and not just like a caring but ill-equipped intellectual parent, but an abusive one with their own psych issues.
What was the Turpin family? Do you guys know about this case? So it was like a family, like two parents were like hardcore, crazy fundamentalist Christians, and
the Christian Scientists, where those kids all died.
Shit. They abused the shit out of their kids.
Yep.
And the daughters are finally speaking out now. They just had a thing. It's I don't even know how. And one of the daughters said I don't even know how to explain it other than using the term hell. And that's what the parents put them through. So it's not like parents are I don't know
there's bad parents. Obviously, right? So when people say that, the people who have the best interest of the child are the parents, no, I mean, in a lot of cases that's not true, right?
I want to ask if the kid believes that they're a different gender, should they alone have the authority to decide to undergo therapy?
It depends on the age, I think.
Neurotic, I'm looking up that specific case. That specific case was
it linked it in live text.
The child was 15 years old.
They're 15 now. I believe they're 11.
Is it fair to say that the age of consent would be the age where a child can make their own decisions about
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I think that there's a lot of nuance, and we really need to look at this in a case-by-case thing. Like, the child needs to talk to professionals who can then determine whether or not a child is capable of making this choice, the same way we see if people are capable of standing trial, basically.
Or if the family has $20,000 a year total income, how do they put out $20,000 a year just for psych treatment of one kid?
Yeah.
I think if a child shows signs that they're transgender, I think that the best thing to do, and I hate to repeat myself because I just keep saying people need to relax. I think you'd be fine if you just let that breathe. I mean, you could just wait, right? Like, don't try and make something happen.
It's a one-way street. You can't go back. So, like, what
Like,
kind
at
of
the
error
same
are you
time,
going to make?
if you wait too long, you might end up with a dead kid, So I think that it really depends.
I'm not saying be negligent.
They're not going to do
but I'm
bottom
saying
surgery in the first 5 years on a 12-year-old.
But they
If
do
you think that
hormones,
that's the
and
case,
hormones are very
Hold on,
important.
guys.
Let's go back to snark or
one at a
shrimp.
time.
Narcotic shrimp.
That's it. I'm just saying, like, at 13 each, like, hormones are very important at that age point. Like, that's pretty much permanent. I haven't looked at signs of it, but like hormones at age 13.
Severe athletes stunt puberty too. Yeah, and that doesn't become controversial the way it does, for gender issues.
Very, very true. Like women who are like young girls who get really into running have like disturbed periods, right? So they don't have a period every month.
But that's a lot of girls too. Like, I didn't get regular periods until I was in my mid-20s.
Yeah. And when there's also, like, what I'm saying is there's also certain like physical activities that people take part in that
still haven't gotten my period.
That natural state too, right? So I was just more trying to bolster the point that Loki was making.
Yeah. Shrimp, do you have anything else to add before we move on to the next person?
Not this second.
Okay. How about let's see. Snark has been in here for a while. I don't think we've heard from Snark.
Yes, Snark.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I can tell, there's about 6 subjects here, right? There's the bathroom issue, the parents issue, activism issue.
I think we can agree that we have talked the bathroom issue to death, and we can move on. So you don't have to address that one.
You can comment.
I'll make a quick comment about the bathroom issue. Most women I've met, and maybe I've met the weird ones, but most women I've met, they say they like having their own bathrooms where men can't enter. What are the reasons for that? Whether it's because they feel unsafe, whether men need to control themselves better, or whatever it is, I don't know. All I know is that in my personal life, my personal experience, most women I've met say I love having a women's bathroom, and I prefer it to stay that way.
Yeah, but so, again, I mean, cis men or trans women, because that's 2 different things.
I'm not sure. Again, I'm talking about biological women that consider themselves, also from a gender point of view, women.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't want a man in the bathroom, but a trans woman, I'd be fine with that, I think.
Yeah, no, again, I was talking about having bathrooms that are gender separated. That's all. I wasn't talking about because that was also brought up here, whether that's necessary or not. All right. As for
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So as for sports, in my opinion, again, there wasn't. I think when sports started, there wasn't really the you had to make a difference, right? At the time, between more capable people or less capable people to even the playing field to some extent, right? Now, obviously, there's better measurements nowadays, and yeah, I'm down for them to be implemented. But allowing a biological male to compete with biological females, right, is problematic in many ways because he has an unfair advantage. All right, so yes, there should be.
Biological male has been on like hormone blockers, and they haven't gone through no puberty.
Do you think what you're saying might be a bit too simplistic?
Again, there should be a better measurement. I was always for tiers in. I'm in a gaming community where they have tiers, right? There's the competitions for the pros, competition for the intermediates, and competition for the noobs, they're called, right? And there definitely should be that in sports, and it shouldn't be men and women, right? But since it currently is separated by men and women, okay, allowing biological males to compete with biological females, in my opinion, all right, is a little bit problematic. It's something to think about. Should that be the difference?
Are there situations where you think it would be okay? Are there situations where you think it would be okay?
Yes, but that's not how it's measured. Again, if it was measured by muscle density,
what do you mean that's not how it's measured? I wasn't talking about a way of measuring things. What are you talking about?
He's offering some nuance that you're not asking for, but that's still his opinion.
I mean, I did ask for nuance. What do you mean that's not how you measure it? I mean,
Snark, finish your point.
No, I'm saying it's a good point. That what I'm saying is that currently, right, there's the male league and the female league in Olympics and all of that, right? That's how currently it's separated. Now that's not the best separation, but because currently that's how it's separated, unfortunately, however you want to put it, I think that allowing biological males to compete with biological females, and it's proven, that they have an unfair advantage. Now, if certain transgenders don't have an advantage because they've been on blockers their entire life or whatever it is, then I'm fine with that. But as long as they do have an advantage, and I've seen many cases where they do and they're still competing, I think that's not okay. That's as if it's separated by muscle density, and the strong muscle density is competing with a lower muscle density.
Yeah,
that's just
I think that's actually a very good way of stating that. I think that's something that a lot of folks could probably agree with.
It's the same reason people have issues with athletes taking steroids, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. I put that in the same category.
I would like to point out that if you begin hormone therapy, you lose the ability to be fertile, both either way that you transition, you don't have the ability to be fertile. And so you're making a 13-year-old at that age, you're just learning what sex even is. And for them to make that decision at that age, I'm not a fan. Especially with, I don't like the pop culture trend of I
think that fertility isn't the most important thing to some folks, though. I could have told you at that age.
You don't like the pop culture trend of what? Encouraging young people to transition?
They're talking about you could be trans, and children are very impressionable, and so you're telling them to explore this idea, and we have these therapies. It's not telling them to, but it's at least suggestive, and it's a very serious thing.
For those that are trans, though, for those who are truly transgender, that is helpful information.
So
I'm drawing the line that they cannot make the decision at that age, but they can know that it's there, and they can do it later, and know that it's an option.
When you were 13, did you know that you were a man or a male?
When I was 13, what grade was I? Grade 8? I mean,
yeah, you knew you were a man. So why can't a trans person know that they're a woman?
Well, that was the statistic I was talking about earlier. I posted it in the live text. It's 61 to 88% of kids with gender dysphoria turn out later to be gay in their later years.
I'm reading 8% detransition rate. I think it's a lot.
Well, I think
the important thing here is to not apply one size fits all things to this very complex issue.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my friend the other day, and I think it applies here. We were talking about the age of consent, and we were talking about how it's possible for a person who's under the age of consent to be extremely mature, and it's possible for a person over the age of consent to be extremely immature. Right, and we said that really the best solution on the planet was if someone, I'm not sure if this is even possible, but if you could make up a consent test, right, where you could actually test the maturity of a human being, and according to that, they would get certified, yes, I can consent, or something like that, like getting your driver's license, or this might be a bit absurd, but since
big validity.
Well, yeah, that's what the therapy is for beforehand.
Yeah, but this test doesn't exist for a reason. Yeah, but this test doesn't exist for a reason, because actually, I don't know if the criteria, if it's really truly possible to have a foolproof test for consent of finding who's mature enough and who isn't mature enough. And that's why the law had to come up with an arbitrary number. I don't know if completely arbitrary, but you could say that most people by this age are intelligent enough to consent and therefore will use this number. All right.
It's a good principle, though, the principle of the test, because like look at weight loss surgery. Before you even have weight loss surgery in a lot of states, a therapist has to sign off that you are okay with this and you're not likely to experience dysphoria afterwards. You know what I mean? So like if something like weight loss surgery has that fail safe, I would imagine something as serious as medically transitioning would also have fail safes in place.
Second, you could
surgery, there are borderlines with extreme addictive behavior who will start drinking more heavily or taking in huge calorie levels in ways that the bariatric surgery doesn't suppress, and it actually becomes harmful to them. And doctors are aware of case history of this. They probably don't try to advertise when they're selling the surgery towards other people. It's not just not helpful, but it can aggravate other serious psych conditions if it's misapplied to people who need psych treatment first.
Well, right. I mean, I was just using that as an example, but I think that
I've known people that who've not been good cases who've gone through that, and they've ended up becoming moved from from 6 or 7 up to 8 of 9 criteria borderlines, and far, worse off for it. But so there are good reasons for that kind of medical, best practices criteria.
Well, yeah, I didn't really want to get onto a tangent about weight loss surgery, but that was just the example I was using.
But it is another example of the difficulty of trying to come up with functional, legal, neutral criteria for complicated issues.
Miller, I'm wondering, should a doctor be required to provide hormone replacement therapy if a patient asks?
No. For example, when I go to my doctor, my primary care physician, and I ask for a letter that I can give my attorney stating that I need to be on disability because of the increasing severity of my condition, he has every right to say no, and that's what happened. He said no, so I went to one of my other doctors, one of my specialists, and they were like, yeah, absolutely, I'll send that over right away. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think anybody should be forced to do anything that they don't want to do.
So broadly, like a therapist, doctor, whatever, shouldn't be forced to give a therapy that they don't don't agree with, broadly.
There's a difference between don't want to because of prejudices against treating the patient in their own religious perspective, which is a malpractice standard, and giving a certification to somebody that for medical reasons they don't think is making a valid request, or it would be malpractice to accommodate the patient. The doctor is a professional,
I don't think has
to have that judgment.
I don't think a doctor has to provide any treatment
for diagnoses. I mean, that happens.
I mean, a patient, can shop around for like a doctor.
I'm okay with
that. And I
that.
think that like with something like transgender or like transgender surgery, like the gender confirmation surgery, that perhaps shopping around might be best. But it's like, I mean, we all kind of do that. Like if my doctor
we don't all do that.
treat no, just hear me out. I'm saying like people who are sick, people like me. A lot of us tend to do that. Like my doctor, my cardiologist, he'll say, he's like, I'm not equipped to treat you. I'm going to send you to somebody else who can treat you. If the person he sends me to is an absolute asshole and isn't willing to work with me at all, then I'm going to go back to that guy and be like, hey, can you send me to someone who's not a total dick? You know what I mean?
I just want to point out that you called me a bigot for suggesting that people that are transgender are anything but normal, and we're talking.
No, it wasn't that. It was not the fact that you were calling them not normal. I was saying that you saying that they shouldn't be allowed to like talk about that, and that a small number of people who you deem as abnormal being loud about it. Okay, well then that was a misunderstanding on my part.
Activism, just like some of the other people in here were talking about how.
Then that was a misunderstanding on my part, and I apologize.
Yeah, he said he's against activism for traits that don't allow people to reproduce, or
Which that maybe isn't bigoted. It's weird, and I do apologize if I misunderstood you. I misunderstood where you were coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think that children should be allowed to shop around for doctors until they find one that's going to give them gender reassignment surgery or hormone blockers.
I mean, as long as a therapist, and maybe one or two, yeah, because you usually have to have two therapists sign off on you. If they sign off on you, I feel like you should be able to find a doctor who will help you. You know what I mean?
But also, I guess there is the question of what is and what is not a child, right? So historically speaking, once you were 13, you were an adult. Period. Right.
That's when you can choose
right,
which
but
parent
we've had a
historical terms.
Yeah, I mean we've had a historical process that's undergone many revisions and and through, at least in America, we have 50 different states that had 50 different laws, and we've tried every combination of ages for all the different forms of consent, from drug use to alcohol use,
that's where the nuance
to
comes
whether you
in.
can drive or whether you are allowed to move out of your parents' house, or whether you're allowed to drop out of school based on what age you are. And the country's pretty much converged to where 18 is the age of consent. And I think it's okay to
depends on the
respect
person.
that. I think it's okay to respect that in most cases, that if you've got a child that's under the age of 18, they're going to need their parents' consent.
What you're saying is wrong there, because 18 is generally the age of majority. It used to be 21, and it's been yo-yoed back and forth with federal extortion over highway funding to states, between 18 and 21, also by the Vietnam War.
But what I'm saying is that there's a law in every state for it already.
You're saying age of consent. What you're talking about is age of majority. Age of consent is usually a younger age when sex may be allowable, although there have been some states
but also you can sign
for unmarried.
I don't think he really cares about the technical specifics of what age of consent really means. I think it's more about the general point that he's trying to make.
Well, no, age of consent is something different than age of majority. Age of majority is when you become an independent legal person for contracts and decisions. Age of consent is a narrower criterion.
Okay.
I'll concede that point. I'll concede that point. So the age of majority.
We don't really need excess tangents. We're having a hard enough time staying on topic.
No, but when we're talking about legal, sociological, ethical, and religious issues, jumbling the terminology when in certain of those fields,
it might be useful to jumble it in this case, because if you're not legally allowed to decide to have sex, how can you be legally allowed to decide what kind of sex you like?
I don't think that we need to go down that rabbit hole, you guys.
I think that's an important point. That's a sharp point.
But I think for bottom surgery,
I'm really interested in this tangent of technicalities. It kind of drives me insane.
Over majority first.
Okay, fine. We all agree. That's fine. We can move on now.
What do we think about sensitivity and perhaps oversensitivity? I mean, there's always going to be assholes in life, right? So am I allowed?
If something is a you problem, if something is a me problem, then I have to deal with it. But if something is a we problem, then we have to work together. I don't like the sound of people chewing. I'm incredibly sensitive to it. It fills me with rage that I can't describe. So I just put music on. I don't tell other people to chew quieter.
Yeah, exactly to that point. Again, so to what point do we go, all right, so how hard should we be on the people who, go around and say fuck you in the street, right? So it's rude, it's impolite, and that person is an asshole, but should we completely...
Are there children around? It depends. But in terms of respecting people's specific to this issue, I think we should respect people's pronouns to a reasonable degree. You know what I mean? If they're changing it every other day and getting mad at us that we can't keep up, that's one thing. But if they're just saying I want to be called she now, then I think we can accept that. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. If you're polite, if you're a nice person, then of course, if Lebowski comes to me tomorrow and he's like, I want to be called Mr. Lebowski, I'll be, sure, why not? So out of respect and being polite, for sure, but my concern is how much people get in trouble, for using wrong pronouns. It's a little concerning sometimes. I mean, here in my country, this person got fined. I can't remember the exact, and there's no way I can translate all the legal issues, but he got fined basically.
Penalized for.
He got legally. Yeah. He got legally He got in legal trouble from that. Yeah. So that's my concern.
What country are you from, Snort?
Israel.
Huh.
Yeah.
So for like misgendering someone,
again, it was.
There shouldn't be legal repercussions. Like that seems a little.
Yeah.
What about social repercussions? How intense should the social repercussions be, right? Because of people's feelings.
I think we should help people learn, like maybe why a person. Like we should teach them the consequences potentially of a person's identity not being like validated. You know what I mean? So if you're constantly misgendering your child, for example, that does lead to a statistically higher suicide rate. I don't have those statistics on hand, but
well,
things like that.
This is my thing, Snark, is that like there's always been societal like repercussions for things you say, right? But nowadays, it seems like it's not the same quantity. Like it might be a lesser offense, but people react harder to it. But that's going to happen. But what I'm more like mostly concerned about is the fact that this will happen to people. They'll get shunned for whatever reason, and the blowback is as hard as it's going to be. But then once that happens, there should be a way to integrate back into society. And that doesn't seem to be there. Like the forgiveness,
like you get shut down forever. People just assume that you can never change. Yeah.
And it's one thing like, if she like what she said was probably, wrong, and but I don't think we should be penalizing people for asking dumb questions personally. But let's just say it was wrong. But like, after we have to have a redemptive process. Like, okay, I learned, blah blah blah, and but it seems like you get that black mark and you're like shunned from. And basically got to become like go on the side that'll take you now, which is what happens a lot, honestly.
That sucks. I don't think we should have that. I think everybody is capable of changing, and I think that we sort of I don't know where it came from, like where it's like you fucked up once and now that's like you said a black mark on you forever. Like that's
I don't know when it started happening.
That's human. I do want
but that's sort of always been the case, though,
if you're
right?
a quieter voice, I don't know who's talking.
What I was going to say, that's sort of always been the case, though, right? So
no, it hasn't always been this bad.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you guys remember, like when you're younger, do you remember the idea of your permanent record? So if you fucked up, that goes on your permanent record. I mean, like. To me, that's something that I remember all the times. Like, if you fucked up in school, that goes on your permanent record, right? So, like, I don't think this notion of somebody fucking up and it like hanging over you for your entire life is necessarily new. I think this is like.
But isn't your example like isn't that just like a fiction? Like there's no permanent record. Like shit you do in elementary school doesn't come up in job interviews. Like that was just a scare tactic, right?
Exactly.
Your criminal record is permanent. No, your criminal record is permanent.
Well, a criminal record, of course.
Whenever you're a kid, that shit gets expunged when you turned 18.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's wrong to conflate criminal.
Though, and they have huge error rates.
Yeah.
Okay. Loki, we don't always need the exact technical whatever on the thing that's being said.
I do want to know the rate of people.
How about a reverse case? How about Fred Phelps in Westboro Baptist?
Okay, I want to hear
the civil rights law before he became an anti-gay bashing bigot, or was he just an instigating lawyer trying to stir up controversies and piss people off so that he could try to sue them, for whatever they did in response to him and profit from suing them? Before he got disbarred, as did two of his kids.
Let's get back on topic.
No, but that's responsive to the idea of the record and people changing. It works the other way.
Yeah, we're just getting a little bit off topic. Like that could be a topic for another time.
I want to challenge the misgendering and gender dysphoria idea.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm just skeptical of this idea that like misgendering a child like hurts them. And I feel like it resonates with us. Like nobody likes being bullied, right? So when you get a nickname that hurts, that makes you feel that points out something that you're uncomfortable about, and everybody calls it to you, it stings, right? And I think they're portraying this as that. But I guess I'm skeptical that it happens as often as they say it does, or if it even happens at all.
Well, I'm not talking about statistically. I'm talking about if somebody comes up to you and says, and I think that I can't remember who raised the question, but I think that's the context in which they meant it was if you know someone or you're talking to someone and you call them by the wrong gender, should you be nice and call them by the gender which they prefer? And I'm not talking about children. Children is a whole other thing. I'm talking about adults.
Yeah, but there's this concept out there that if you misgender someone, it stings. Well,
it hurts. It probably does for them. I mean, can't speak for it. I don't know if any of us have gender dysphoria here. If someone does,
yeah, I mean, I've definitely ran into a couple of trans people that were definitely hurt by getting misgendered, but it's on them to get better coping mechanisms. Really, I mean.
Well, sure, and it's also on us to try to understand better. We should care about one another in such a way that we're not being like, oh, well, it sucks to be you. That's not a great way to have a healthy society, I don't think.
Well, I think
have you heard from
someone on purpose to bully them? I mean, that's gonna hurt just like a mean nickname does.
Yeah, but exactly. But if you do it on accident and they correct you, then it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know.
The whole idea of pronouns, though, is to simplify language in shorter words that can have simple classifications and to have common meaning. The way that's gone with gender dysphoria is sort of like a nutcase shotgun blast of chaos that doesn't have common meaning, but changing fluidly. That there are more genders than there are people, because gender is a word that's misused a lot, but it's a mixture of social construct and personal identity that's fluid and dynamic to a large extent. The whole idea that it's static and can be mapped to a person and learned and memorized long enough term to be stable, both in societal meaning to everyone who might speak it and hear it, and to the individual building his identity around it, is
I can't understand when you obfuscate everything.
So what? I mean, what do you do with what do you do with people that come from a language like Visayan in the Philippines that don't even have gender conjugations or different genders for their pronouns in their language? It's just everything is she. Like you get everything is a she.
I want to hear from
people are not going to misgender, right? If they don't even have gender pronouns, they're not going to misgender, right?
I want to
if we can hear from, let's see, we haven't heard from Bojangles, I don't think, or March, and Wise Ape, we haven't heard from you either.
Oh, Wise is in the house. Wise, how's it going, bud?
I think Wise Ape was trying to talk earlier, but his mic was so quiet that nobody could hear him.
Yeah, I just joined. Good afternoon, you guys.
What's up? What's up, baby?
Good afternoon.
So
I'm gonna have to sign off pretty soon. So if everybody, once we hear from the last couple people who joined in, if everybody wants to head over to the tavern, you can continue this conversation. But I think we're getting ready to take it off the air.
You're gonna move it to the Tav?
Yeah, if that's okay with everybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's up to the powers that be.
Yeah, so we started at 7 my time, it's now 9. 2 hours of conversation is about all I have in me. I will see you guys next Wednesday. I don't know what we're going to be talking about, but I appreciate everybody coming to stop by. It was a lively discussion. I learned a lot personally from hearing everybody's perspectives. I thought it was really interesting. I appreciate everybody keeping it civil, and I'm sorry for the person that I called a bigot, whose name can't tell who's talking in here. I'm sorry, I do apologize, I misunderstood what you were saying. The thing that I thought you were saying, I think was objectively bigoted, but you weren't saying it, so I do apologize. I'm very sorry, I feel bad about that, so many apologies to you.
Thank you, Michaela.
So, yeah, if everybody wants to head over to the tavern. Also, hi, Naz, I see you in here.
Yeah.